Hello everyone, welcome back to what's the name of the books? Hello everyone, welcome back to Effective Business Communication for Dummies by Dr. Jill Skifelben. In this chapter 3, we're going to focus on letting your body do the talking, using space and environment to communicate, modifying your volume, pitch, and other vocal qualities to enhance meaning, and sending a message loud and clear through your silence. So, in chapter 3, communicating without words, nonverbal communication, we'll start. More Than Words is the title of a popular song by Extreme, but it's also a useful definition for nonverbal communication. It's everything other than words that you use to communicate. It includes facial expressions, gestures, volume and tone of voice, posture, eye contact, appearance, physical proximity, and even touch. According to at least one estimate from back in the 1960s, when people actually talked to one another, nonverbal communication accounts for approximately 93% of the meaning exchanged during an in-person interaction. Please see the nearby sidebar. I can't believe it's 93% for details about that estimate. Most researchers these days consider 93% to be the upper extreme. Today's estimates commonly specify a range of about 60 to 90%, but there's still a significant portion of communication that occurs non-verbally. In other words, to communicate most effectively, you are wise to pay attention to not only the words you say, but also how you say them vocally and with your body language. So let's look at the sidebar here. I can't believe it's 93%. In the 1960s, psychologist Albert Mehrabian conducted a study that put him in textbooks for decades to come. Heck, he made it into this book too. He studied how more than 100 college students derived meaning from messages in face-to-face interactions. He concluded that only 7% of meaning comes from words. Of the other 93%, different vocal dimensions like volume, tone, and so on accounted for 38%, and body language, posture, gestures, facial expressions, and so on accounted for the remaining 55%. Wait, what? So, why do we spend so much time crafting messages? Unfortunately, people who quote the 93% stat often omit the fact that Mehrabian's study focused narrowly on situations in which a person's nonverbal communication contradicted the verbal message being conveyed. For example, if you say you're happy with a frown on your face, most people will conclude that you are unhappy. So that 90% statistic isn't accurate for all and even most situations. What is important is that nonverbal communication contributes significantly to the messages people convey and how those messages are interpreted. So in this chapter, we learn that the author presents the various types of nonverbal communication and provides guidance on how to use them to your advantage. Let's start with the first part, using your body to communicate. A significant component of nonverbal communication is body language. The use of physical movements, expressions, and mannerisms to communicate without words, often instinctively or subconsciously instead of consciously. Body language includes gestures, facial expressions, and eye contact. In this session, I cover each category of body language and provide guidance on how to use your body to communicate more effectively. Two topics I don't cover in any depth in this session are appearance and posture. I avoid these topics intentionally because the variations are too great among genders and industries and specific contexts. The only specific advice I offer relevant to appearance is to dress for the situation you're in. Whether you want to admit it or not, people often form their initial judgments of others, at least in part, on appearance. So the tip here is, if you're not sure what to wear, ask someone you trust who's familiar with the environment, situation, or event. You don't want your communication to be derailed from the very start simply because you are unaware of any customs or norms for a meeting. Using gestures to express yourself or emphasize what you're saying. Gestures are physical movements that express or help express thoughts or emotions or emphasize a spoken message. Common gestures include waving hello or goodbye, shrugging your shoulders to indicate uncertainty, nodding your head in agreement, covering your mouth to indicate shock, pointing to indicate direction, fidgeting to express nervousness, and many more. Gesturing with your head. You're probably already familiar with the following common head gestures. Nodding your head up and down to indicate agreement or answer yes. Pivoting your head to one side to show disagreement or answer no. Tilting your head slightly to the side to indicate that you are thinking or confused. Bowing your head to show reverence or to communicate respect or submission. Head gestures include many subtle nuances. For example, the speed at which you nod your head makes a difference. A slow nod shows that you are listening and generally in agreement, whereas a fast nod may express agreement and indicate that you are eager to find out more. The distance you move your head while nodding can also carry a subtle meaning. For example, a big nod may indicate total agreement. So remember, rarely do gestures have universal meaning, and the meaning often varies in context and when combined with other gestures. For example, in many Asian cultures, nodding the head may indicate that the person heard your statement, not necessarily that they agree. A slow tilt of the head to the side could be a sign that a listener heard what you said and is thinking about it. But if that tilt is accompanied by a furrowed brow, it could be a sign that the listener is confused. A tilt with a smirk may indicate that the person disagrees with what you said. We have the sidebar about nonverbal communication in the animal kingdom. I'm writing this chapter as I sit outside of the Bundi impenetrable in impenetrable national impenetrable. Uh, how do I pronounce this? Bundi? Okay, I would call it Bundi impenetrable national forest in Uganda, where I spent 2 days trekking through the jungle to observe a family of mountain gorillas. Before starting the trek, our group was briefed multiple times about how to communicate with the gorillas. especially the silverback or the alpha gorilla, in the event that we made eye contact. Our guide demonstrated and explained the meaning of a few essential nonverbal utterances, grunts, in a specific pitch and duration, and showed us how to communicate respect and submission to the silverback. If the alpha made eye contact with any of us, we were to avert our eyes downward immediately and slightly bow our head. If he started coming toward us, we were to remain still because any gesture could be interpreted as a sign of challenge. Oh my god. Oh. These nonverbal gestures communicate the same meaning in most human cultures. Of course, that fact shouldn't be a surprise. We are human. We humans share over 98% of our DNA with the gorilla. Next part, gesturing with your hands. Hand gestures are an important component of business communication. You can use them to convey meaning, establish rapport, and clarify the meaning and tone of what you're saying. Here are two common hand gestures used in business situations and their meaning. Handshake. Um, this universal gesture of greeting, agreement, or farewell signifies trust, respect, and professionalism. Just like the birds, remember, just like the birds in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, your handshake should be not too hard or too soft, but just right. And keep it short, typically 2 to 5 seconds in duration. Most experts, including this one, recommend a firm handshake as it signals confidence. A handshake shouldn't too f- a handshake that's too firm can come across as aggressive, and one that's too soft can signal insincerity or weakness. Also important in the United States and many Western cultures is to maintain eye contact while shaking hands. The tip here is pointing. Oh no, the next part is pointing. Point with your index finger to call attention to something or indicate direction, but avoid pointing at people because it can make them feel as though they are being blamed or the subject of unwanted attention. A more subtle way to single out someone is to point by gesturing with your entire hand, palm up, as if you are introducing the person. I think this is pretty much fundamental. Remember, be sure your gestures are consistent with any spoken message. If your gestures contradict with what you're saying, people will question your credibility. For example, if you're saying that you're confident about the company's future prospects, but you're fidgeting with a pen while saying it, audience members won't believe you completely. In fact, they give more credence to your gestures. After all, actions speak louder than words. What you see is more powerful than what you hear. The message you see is more powerful than the message you hear. If you don't believe that, try playing a few rounds of Simon Says, the classic children's game. The person leading the game, the person chosen to be Simon, tells all the other players what to do. As long as the leader starts the command with Simon Says, everyone else must do what they are told. However, if Simon issues a command without first saying Simon Says, and a player follows that command, that player is out of the game. To complicate the game, Simon acts out every command, regardless of whether that command is preceded by the phrase Simon says. So one round may go something like this. Simon says, touch your head. Simon says, touch your shoulders. Simon says, jump up and down. Stop. Simon stops jumping. Anyone who stopped jumping is out of the game because Simon didn't say Simon says stop. This game is challenging for two reasons. First, it gets players in the habit of following orders so that when one of those orders is a little different, not preceded by Simon says, it breaks the natural flow. Second, all eyes are on the person playing Simon, and when Simon says stop, and just stop jumping, the players see Simon stop before they have time to realize that Simon didn't say Simon says. The people see 20 to 100 times faster than they hear. Players tend to follow what they see faster than they can process what they hear. The same is true when you are interacting with others in any environment or situation. People see and interpret your gestures faster than they hear and process your words. So be sure that your words and gestures align. I think this one is important. Making faces. Facial expressions. Your face can express the entire spectrum of human emotions from joy and love to sadness and hate and everything in between. Curiosity, fear, disgust, surprise, boredom, interest, and more. While not exhaustive, Table 3.1 gives you a sampling of the many expressions that your faces can communicate and the possible meanings of each. Remember, you can communicate with posture alone, head gestures alone, hand gestures alone, facial expressions alone, and words alone. But combining two or more reinforces and amplifies the message. Assuming, of course, that all the signals you're sending are consistent. If the messages you're sending verbally and non-verbally conflict, they'll cause confusion and dilute the meaning and understanding you are intending to convey. Let's look at the table of expressions and their meanings. So we've got facial expressions and the possible meaning. Biting lips may mean nervousness, anticipation, or flirtation. Blank stare may mean detachment, boredom or shock. Frown, sadness, displeasure or frustration. Furrowed brow, anger, determination or deep thought. Grimace may mean pain, discomfort or disgust. Narrowing eyes, suspicion, anger or concentration. Pursed lips, disapproval, uncertainty or thoughtfulness. Raised eyebrows, surprise, interest, confusion or disbelief. Raised eyebrows with a half smile, skepticism, amusement, or mild disbelief. Rolling eyes, often accompanied by a sigh, annoyance, exasperation, or dismissal. Smile may mean happiness, friendliness, or amusement. Tightened jaw or clenched teeth means anger, tension, or frustration. Wide open eyes may indicate astonishment, fear, or excitement. Wrinkled nose may mean disgust, scrutiny, or judgment. Maintaining eye contact without staring. Maintaining eye contact is essential for effective face-to-face communication in business in North American cultures because it establishes trust and builds rapport. conveys incredibility and confidence, shows that you are paying attention, facilitates connection and understanding, demonstrates leadership, enhances negotiation. But there's a warning that don't get into staring contest. Let your eyes wander a little during the conversation. Try to notice everything about the person, including any body language they're using. Feel free to glance down at your notes occasionally, but not at your phone, because looking at your phone during a conversation communicates that you're not fully present in the moment. Next part is about distance. Keeping a comfortable and effective distance. If you ever been accosted by a close talker, you already know a little about proxemics and the impact it can have on communication. Proxemics is the study of cultural, behavioral, and sociological aspects of spatial distances between people. Standing too close can seem threatening, especially when accompanied by a harsh tone, command, or critic. Standing too far away may communicate fear or lack of interest. Leaning in a little from a comfortable distance, or maintaining eye contact without staring. Maintaining eye contact is essential for effective face-to-face communication in business in North American cultures because it establishes trust and builds rapport, conveys credibility and confidence, shows that you are paying attention, facilitates connection and understanding, demonstrates leadership, enhances negotiation. Warning: don't get into a staring contest. Let your eyes wander a little during the conversation. Try to notice everything about the person, including any body language they're using. Feel free to glance down at your notes occasionally, but not at your phone, because looking at your phone during conversation communicates that you're not fully present in the moment. Keeping a comfortable and effective distance. If you've ever been accosted by a close talker, you already know a little about prox- proxemi- proxemics and the impact it can have on communication. Proxemics is the study of cultural, behavioral, and sociological aspects of spatial distances between people. Standing too close can seem threatening, especially when accompanied by a harsh tone, command, or critic. Standing too far away may communicate fear or a lack of interest. Leaning in a little from a comfortable distance can indicate interest or attention. Leaning back with arms crossed may signal disagreement, boredom, or contempt. Effective communicators are mindful of their proximity to the people they are conversing with, and they try to maintain a comfortable, effective distance. In this session, I introduce you to the four proxemic zones and provide guidance on how to arrange your workspace to make it more conducive to open communication. Digging up the roots of proxemics. Proxemics. Proxemics? Oh, proxemics. Digging up the roots of proxemics. Like many concepts in the communication field, proxemics originated in the mid-20th century when anthropologist Edward T. Hall, who was serving in the US Army at the time, observed the distance people maintained between one another in different settings. When he started looking into it more closely, he found that people from different cultures perceived personal space differently. Hall identified four proxemic zones. comfort zones that differ depending on the situation and the people involved. Since the 1960s, the researchers have extrapolated that Hall's findings to numerous other communication contexts, just like I do in this chapter. Exploring the four proxemic zones. Edward T. Hall, the founder of proxemics, identified four proxemic zones that describe the distances people feel are appropriate between them based on their relationship to one another and the environment or situation they are in. In this session, I describe the four proxemic zones to be aware of so that you can remain at a comfortable distance at all times while using space to your communicative advantage. The intimate zone. In professional environments, you generally want to steer clear of the intimate zone, which ranges from the point at which you are physically touching someone to about 18 inches apart. In the business world, people are very rarely breach this zone. And when they do, they risk becoming the target of disciplinary action and perhaps even a lawsuit. Rare exceptions to this rule apply to shaking hands or sitting close to someone in a meeting or at a conference when you're both facing the same direction. Reserve the intimate zone for family members, close friends, and really close friends outside the work environment. Even when people shake hands, they tend to keep their bodies outside the intimate zone, extending their arms and hands as if to safely and respectfully bridge the distance. Remember, keep in mind that proxemic zones vary among cultures. Latin cultures, for example, tend to be more comfortable being closer than many in the United States. See chapter 20 for more about communicating across cultures. Personal space. Personal, personal space with a range of 1 to 4 feet is typically the best distance to default to if you already have a relationship with someone, such as a co-worker or a boss. Typically, the closer your relationship, or not meaning intimate, but more along the lines of longevity, strength, and so on, the less personal space someone needs to feel comfortable. The tip here is to project confidence and power, feel an appropriate amount of space whenever you enter a room or sit at a table. In business, taking up space is often a sign of power and confidence. Of course, you don't want to be elbowing people and shoving others out of the way or invading their personal space, but don't shrink into yourself or try to wedge yourself into a tight spot. Doing so projects weakness and a lack of confidence. If you don't have enough space, politely ask people to move over so that you have the space you need. The social the social zone. Social zone is the distance people feel comfortable around strangers before they start getting to know you, before they start to get to know them. Most researchers estimate that this zone ranges from about 4 to 12 feet. The tip here is, if you find yourself in the social zone with someone you are attempting to build a relationship with, don't rush it. Slowly move closer and gauge the reaction of the other person. If they step closer, great. If they step back or appear to be nervous, they're not ready. Respect each other's personal space, realizing that each person's comfort zone can be different and can change as the situation evolves. If you've ever been on a crowded plane, bus, or train, you've probably noticed that many people don't converse with one another. Many may even appear anxious or stare down at their feet or the feet of their fellow passengers. One of the reasons for their discomfort is that they are forced into sharing their intimate zones with complete strangers. If you sit next to someone, they may even be reluctant to strike up a conversation. Respect their space. And if you need to converse with them, take a gradual approach. Public distance. Public distance is that space, is that space that's comfortable amid total strangers outside the confines of any social or business setting. It's typically over 12 feet. Imagine how you'd feel if you were walking down the street and someone walking towards you on the opposite side suddenly decided to cross over to your side. You'd probably feel a little uncomfortable or maybe even threatened because now the person was on track to enter your personal space. Obviously, in some settings, public space is much closer. For example, when you are sitting in a bar or restaurant, or traveling on a plane, bus, or train, or walking on a crowded sidewalk. In a business setting, public space typically applies only to the people on stage in a crowded room who may be a considerable distance from their audience. Arranging your workspace or workplace for the culture you want to nurture. When you're arranging your office or an entire workplace, put some thought into the message you want to convey and the culture you want to foster. For example, if you're trying to build a collaborative culture in which everyone communicates freely with one another, creates an open floor plan with collaborative workspaces, modular or movable furniture, and whiteboards. Make sure leadership offices are accessible. For example, establish an open door policy. Or if you are in a position of authority, come out from behind your desk and sit in a chair at their level when people come to you for advice or for performance review. In contrast, if you're trying to create a strong hierarchical work environment, give everyone on the leadership team a big fancy office and assign everyone else cramped cubicles or a shared workspace. Use barriers between management and staff like walls and large desks as constant reminders of your differences in status and power. Of course, I'm not recommending this approach. I'm just pointing out that you need to be conscious of the message you are sending to others when you arrange space. Be intentional when making choices. Don't think exclusively about your comfort and privacy. Consider how your choices will impact the ways people interact with one another. See the nearby sidebar, tuning in to the world around you for some real world examples. Tuning in to the world around you. You can discover a great deal about how to arrange space by observing how others arrange their space. Think about being called into the principal's office at school, or if you never experienced that because you weren't as overachieving as I was growing up. Thinking of entering your boss's office and finding them sitting behind the desk. That desk is a nonverbal communicator of power. It's there to tell people who's in charge and who's not. Chances are chances are good that the person on the other side of the desk is also seated in a bigger chair that makes them significantly taller than you. That's another that's another nonverbal communicator of power. Physical barriers like these hinder the free exchange of information. Similar barriers are used in traditional classroom settings. The teacher is at the front of the room, often seated behind a desk or standing behind a podium, while students are seated behind their own mini desks facing the front of the room. The teacher is sending the clear message, I'm in charge and you're not. Many classrooms at all levels of education are changing to more open seating arrangements and roundtable discussions to accommodate a more open and collaborative learning experience. When teacher and students are seated together, education becomes more dynamic, with students taking on a more active role in the process. Many doctors are rearranging their offices to encourage patients to communicate more openly. Rooms now include chairs, along with a traditional examination table. Before your physical exam, you sit in a chair, often at the same level as the doctor, to discuss why you are there. Studies show that this form of communication results in patients sharing more information with the doctors. This conversational consultative approach encourages patients to play a more active role in their own health, partnering with the doctor to optimize the treatment outcome. Getting in touch with haptics. Haptics. Haptics is the study of the sense of touch, and it doesn't and shouldn't have much to do with the business communication, because except for the occasional handshake or pat on the back, people don't regularly communicate by touch in business setting. In fact, touching can make people you interact with feel uncomfortable and sometimes even threatened. Case in point, at the G8 summit in Saint Petersburg, Russia, President George Washington Bush approached German Chancellor Angela Merkel from behind while she was seated and squeezed her shoulders, which she immediately shrugged off as she grimaced in response. This unsolicited, unsolicited unsolicited message, as many in the media dubbed it, was captured on video and shared through media outlets around the world. Outlets Through media outlets around the world. This form of touch was inappropriate for a formal meeting such as the G8 summit, and it was clearly in violation of Merkel's personal space. Many even argued that it was sexist, that it would not have been done if a male was sitting in that same chair, based on the fact that Bush didn't provide unsolicited messages to anyone else in the room. The only good of it comes from the fact that it serves as a perfect example of what not to do in a professional setting. Using your voice to enhance your message. The words you say matter, but how you say those words matters as well, and sometimes even more so. How you pronounce words, how carefully you enunciate, how loud and fast you talk, the tone of your voice, and all the aspects of how you deliver your lines can all impact the meaning of what you say and your audience's perception of you. In this session, I provide guidance on how to speak more effectively and avoid mistakes that can detract from your meaning and the impression you're trying to make. Pay attention to enunciation and pronunciation. A music teacher I had in elementary school told me that the most successful lip singers, yes, I was being given advice on lip singing because I was that bad in the choir, committed to it by opening their mouth wide and silently enunciating every syllable of each word in the lyric. She was on to something, as I'd later learn in my public speaking career. The more you open your mouth to enunciate each syllable, the more clearly you project your voice, and the easier it is for people to understand you. Not to mention that it facilitates lip reading for those who have a hearing impairment. When you're speaking, focus on both pronunciation and enunciation. Pronunciation, what is that? Pronunciation is the act of speaking words in a way that is accepted or generally understood. For example, if you have a southern drawl, say oil instead of or. If you have an New England accent, I cannot do this. Work on saying park your car instead of park your car. No, I can't. Enunciation is the act of pronouncing each syllable of a word clearly and distinctively. Distinctly. When you fail to enunciate, words become garbled or run together. Most successful communicators enunciate each syllable in each word, even when speaking quickly. Mispronunciation and poor enunciation can harm your credibility, erode confidence, and result in misunderstandings. With a last name like, okay, I'm not a stranger to mispronunciation. The tip here is practice recording yourself speak and then listen to the recording to determine how well you are pronouncing and enunciating words. You may also try practicing with a speech-to-text app. If the app is having trouble figuring out the words you're saying, focus on being more intentional in your pronunciation and enunciation and try slowing down a bit, using paralanguage to enhance what you're saying. Paralanguage is the rate, volume, and pitch of your voice. It applies to all the vocal variations that aren't actual words, but that impact the meaning of the words. In this session, I explain how to use these vocal variations to your advantage in your business communications. The tip here is, in our remote and global workplaces, virtual meetings are ripe for practicing your nonverbal communication skills. While I prefer that anyone I'm meeting with has the camera on so that I can have more nonverbal cues to help understand the message, sometimes it's not possible in certain environments. If you're off camera for any reason, you really need to make sure that your paralanguage is on point. Let's start with rate. Rate is the speed at which you speak, the number of words per minute. The average English speaker in North America speaks about 110 to 150 words per minute. Venturing too far out of this range either way sends a message to be a more effective speaker. Adjust your rate of speech to your purpose. Slower to create a more intentional and dramatic delivery. Faster to convey a sense of excitement or energy. Volume, volume, volume. Volume is the loudness of your voice. It can range from a soft whisper to being so loud that people feel as though you are yelling at them. Always speak loudly enough that everyone can hear what you're saying without having to strain, so that they don't miss any words. If you're speaking to a large audience, be loud enough so your voice reaches the back row. Beyond that, you can vary your volume for dramatic effect. Here are a few options. Use variations in volume, rate, and tone to keep people from falling asleep. Speaking in a monotone voice makes people drowsy. It's like white noise. When delivering a speech, consider using variations in volume to emphasize important points. If you're building suspense, start by lowering your voice, then raise it to deliver the dramatic conclusion. Speak softly, but loudly enough for everyone to hear. to convey a sense of intimacy or act as though you are letting the audience in on a secret. Warning. When nervous, people tend to speak too quickly. To be conscious of any tendency to speak so fast that your words run together. Practice relaxation techniques such as controlled breathing to modulate your speed. Next one is pitch. Pitch is the highness or lowness of your voice, the deepness or steepness. High-pitched voices often come off as squeaky, whereas low-pitched voices come off as muffled or thundering. As with rate and volume, try to match the pitch of your voice to your message and the emotion you want to convey. For example, to stress the point or elicit excitement, raise the pitch of your voice. To present a more serious point or set a more somber tone, lower your pitch. Vary your pitch to hold your audience's attention and enhance the meaning and emotional content of your message. The paralanguage roller coaster. Over a decade ago, yes, I'm aging myself, I released a YouTube video called Paralanguage Roller Coaster. And yes, if you Google it, you still find it and find 2012 me with some stellar shirt cuffs. The whole idea behind the video was to illustrate how variations in voice create interest and help capture and hold the attention of an audience during a speech. Think about a roller coaster ride. If you were going one speed on a flat track the entire time, you'd be bored. Nobody would be waiting in line to experience that ride. What makes a roller coaster so much fun is the different sensations you experience. The slow, steady ascent, the fast and furious drop, the twists, the turns. The variation in the ride brings excitement and keeps you interested. Similarly, a dynamic speaker uses variations in their paralanguage. They vary their rate, tone and volume, pitch based on the message they're trying to convey. This strategy keeps the attention of the audience and helps to emphasize key points. It allows you to bring your listeners along on a vocal journey, helping them experience firsthand the emotions you're sharing by changing your voice accordingly. Next time you're giving a speech, think about how you create these roller coaster moments for your audience using your voice. Avoiding the use of filler words. Filler words are meaningless utterances that speakers often add to fill any pauses and try to make what they're saying appear to flow more smoothly. Here's an example. Do you want to go to the theater, like see a show with me? We'll have a great time, you know. Filler words are rarely included in print like this. Even transcription services edit out the filler words, so people often are unaware that they have a problem. However, if you record yourself in casual conversations and in speeches and listen to the recordings, you can usually determine whether you have a problem. Used too frequently, filler words can erode your credibility, position you in an unconfident light, and impact your communicative success. When I was in high school and early on my college years, I fell into the bad habit of seasoning my language with the words like. It got so bad, apparently, that my whole family at a dinner teamed up against me. Every time I said the word like during dinner, someone would slap their hand on the table. It was perhaps a bit harsh, but it truly drove the point home. Needless to say, I restrict my use of that word as much as possible as much as possible now. And if you find yourself struggling with a filler word, whether it's like or or so, or some other utterances, you can have friends help you with this problem by calling you out on a filler word usage, conveying conveying meaning and emotion through silence. Silence is Golden is a song by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. It was also a phrase splashed across theatre screens in the 1990s and 2000s to encourage theatre-goers to be quiet during the movie. I love his phrase because it expresses how I feel about silence in business communication. As a means of non-verbal communication, silence is one of the most impressive tools at your disposal. When used strategically, silence is powerful. Here are a few ways to use silence to your advantage in a business setting. Pause before introducing the most poignant points of your message, including your take-home message. This pregnant pause, or slightly extended pause, is a powerful tool in drama and comedy alike. Successful stand-in comedians are masters of pausing purposefully before and after delivering a punchline to get the biggest laugh. Pause to listen and observe the audience's reaction. You can't talk and listen at the same time with total concentration. Pausing after you deliver a key point enables you to observe whether it has had the desired impact. See Chapter 5 for more about listening. Go silent or take a break during a negotiation to strengthen your position. For example, if after you deliver what you believe is a fair offer, a negotiation partner counters your offer, waiting to respond sends a strong message that you're not interested in the counteroffer. Nice advice. Okay, that's the end of this chapter.